History books rarely mention it, but medieval people had free time. Not a lot of it, but some, and they used it in the most gloriously unhinged ways imaginable. Tonight, we are talking about the stuff people did when they were not dying, suffering, or praying desperately not to do either. You have just woken up in the year 1310. It is a Saturday. You finished your work for the day, barely, and now you have a few precious hours that are technically yours. Welcome to medieval leisure. Feast days were not casual affairs. They were events with anticipation, preparation, and a social electricity that your average Thursday night dinner simply cannot replicate. Inan, furtage, wheels of cheese, and enough ale to make everyone temporarily forget about the rent they owed. The church provided approximately 115 days per year that were technically non-working holidays. Think of it less like a dinner party and more like the medieval version of a music festival, except the headliner was a roasted pig. The medieval tavern was less a business and more a living organism. Part social club, part gossip exchange, part unofficial courthouse. Ale was the drink of choice. Weak enough for breakfast, and strong enough by evening to make everything feel like a reasonable idea. It was murky, warm, frequently a bit sour, but it was safer than water. Taverns were where you heard the news, met travelers passing through, listened to stories, and occasionally watched someone get into a fight about a pig. They were the original social media, loud, unreliable, and deeply addictive. In a world without books for most people, stories were everything. Traveling storytellers, bards, troubadours, minstrels were the closest thing medieval people had to a Netflix subscription. The stories were not gentle. They involved dragons, betrayals, doomed love affairs, miraculous saints, and heroes doing spectacularly stupid things for honor. Ghost stories were predictably very popular. A skilled storyteller could make the audience press closer to the fire and glance at the darkened doorway. In the medieval world, music was not something you consumed passively with earbuds in. It was something you made. Everyone made it. Instruments ranged from simple wooden pipes and hand drums to the hurdy-gurdy, an instrument that produced a deeply strange droning sound that could either be hauntingly beautiful or deeply alarming, depending on who was playing it. Songs were how information moved and how feelings got processed. Work songs accompanied repetitive labor. Love songs circulated through the population like earworms. Drinking songs turned a normal evening into an event. Medieval people loved dancing with a commitment that was frankly impressive given everything else going on in their lives. Village dances called carols were circles of people holding hands, moving together, sometimes singing the accompaniment themselves. It was one of the few activities where social hierarchy got blurry. When the music started, the blacksmith's daughter and the baker's son were just two people in the same circle, moving to the same beat. A medieval wedding without dancing was barely a wedding. People danced because it felt good, because it was done together. Chess was the game of the educated and the elite, but also of anyone who wanted to seem educated and elite, which turned out to be a surprisingly large number of people. Dice games especially carried a reputation for ruining lives, which only made them more popular. Tables, the ancestor of backgammon, combined strategy with luck, making it more democratic, more exciting, and considerably more suitable for gambling. The competitive spirit board games released was not always gentle. Records of arguments, accusations of cheating, and overturned boards confirm that the human capacity for taking recreational competition personally has not evolved at all in 700 years. For the nobility, hunting was an entire lifestyle, a passion that consumed enormous amounts of time, money, and effort. The Great Noble Hunt was an event with organizational complexity that would not embarrass a modern military operation. Getting the ceremony wrong was genuinely socially embarrassing. For the average peasant, hunting was technically illegal on most land. The forest belonged to the Lord, and poaching a rabbit could mean serious punishment. But people did it anyway, quietly at night, with the particular expression of someone who is definitely not doing anything wrong. If hunting was medieval theater, falconry was medieval opera. Training a bird of prey required months of patient, painstaking work, a specialized vocabulary, specialist equipment, and a bird that could, at any point, simply decide it was done with the whole arrangement and fly away. Different species of falcon were associated with different social ranks. A peregrine falcon was for a prince. A goshawk was for a yeoman. If you showed up with a sparrowhawk, people noticed. It was in the most medieval way possible. Extremely petty. Long before organized athletics, with scoreboards and sponsorship deals, there was the medieval village sports day. Informal, rowdy, and governed primarily by whatever the participants agreed on 5 minutes before starting. Inan, ras, ma, racial competitions. Foot races were common at festivals. Stone throwing tested raw strength. What united all of this was the quality of live spectacle. No production budget was required, just a field, a crowd, and the specific juggling, tumbling, tightrope, walking, contortion, fire eating. Medieval Europe had traveling entertainers who wandered from town to town, performing a genuinely impressive range of physical acts. They occupied a strange social position, welcomed enthusiastically on performance day. Medieval people had real theater, scripted, rehearsed, costumed, performed for an audience that tackled the entire Bible in dramatic form. Mystery plays dramatized the stories of Scripture in language that was sometimes solemn, often surprisingly funny. God appeared on stage. The devil appeared on stage, usually as a comic villain who got laughed at. The Hellmouth was one of the most popular features of the entire cycle. Medieval audiences loved the devil. They laughed loudly at a figure they were simultaneously supposed to fear. Pilgrimage was also fun. It was travel in a world where most people rarely left their home parish. It meant new roads, new people, shared meals with strangers. Social world of pilgrimage was its own temporary community. People thrown together by shared destination, with the particular openness that travel produces in people who have stepped outside their normal identities. Coming home, you brought back a pilgrim's badge, proof of your journey. You brought back stories. You brought back the knowledge of a larger world, acquired the hard way. One step at a time. Imagine a county fair. Now remove the electricity, the cotton, candy, and the safety regulations. Add animal trading, traveling, merchants, selling goods from 3 countries away. Or quantities of ale, and a genuine sense that anything might happen. May Day was one of the most beloved celebrations. Garlands of flowers, dancing around a maypole, crowning a May Queen, midsummer brought bonfires lit on hilltops, visible for miles. Harvest festivals closed the cycle with genuine gratitude. The difference of grade, way, for and. Medieval children played with enthusiasm, creativity, and a complete willingness to play with literally anything that could be turned into a toy. Spinning tops, hoops rolled through the street and each other. games of tag and hide and seek appear in medieval sources with enough regularity to confirm that children have always wanted to chase each other around. Medieval children were not small adults waiting sadly to grow up. They were children doing what children have always done, turning the available world into a game and playing it as hard as they could. For a significant portion of medieval people, church was one of the most musically stimulating experiences of their week. Medieval liturgical music. Plainchant, polyphony, antiphony, was composed and performed with a seriousness and sophistication that produced sounds people wept to hear. These churches were literally built to amplify inas, something that filled every corner of a vast space. In the medieval calculus of joy, the sacred and the celebratory were never really separate. The same people who sang in the picture that emerges is not the one the history books usually give. Medieval people feasted. They drank, they told stories and sang songs. They danced and gambled and argued about board games. They traveled and performed and watched theater and went on pilgrimages. They celebrated the seasons with a fervor that made the long winters survivable and the good times feel earned. They were, in other words, people. And tore full stop. And they found ways to make their world feel alive, not despite the difficulty of their lives, but because of it.